Thank you for joining us again today. This week, we're wrapping up our series together. We've learned that God is always with us, He prepares us, and He gives us strategy. And today, we'll be talking about how God gives me the courage to follow through. Sometimes when we go through difficult times, maybe things don't go the way that we planned. It's easy to forget that God is with us, and we may even want to give up or stop seeking and trusting Him. But in today's Bible story, we're going to meet a man named Job, a man who sought God like no one else in his lifetime. Let's read his story in Job chapter 1. There was a man named Job who lived in the land of Uz, and he was blameless, a man of complete integrity. He feared God and stayed away from evil. He had 7 sons and 3 daughters. He owned 7,000 sheep, 3,000 camels, 500 teams of oxen, and 500 female donkeys. He also had many servants. He was, in fact, the richest person in that entire area. One day, the members of the heavenly court came to present themselves before the Lord, and the accuser Satan came to them. "Where have you come from?" the Lord asked Satan. And Satan answered the Lord, "I've been patrolling the earth, watching everything that's going on." Then the Lord asked Satan, "Have you noticed my servant Job? He is the finest man in all the earth. He is blameless, a man of complete integrity. He fears God and stays away from evil." And Satan replied to the Lord, "Yes, but Job has good reason to fear God. You've always put a wall of protection around him and his home and his property. You have made him prosper in everything he does. Look how rich he is. But reach out and take away everything he has, and he will surely curse you to your face." "All right, you may test him," the Lord said to Satan. "Do whatever you want with everything he possesses, but don't harm him physically." So Satan left the Lord's presence. Job 1, 1 through 12. God allowed Satan to test Job, but on the condition that he would not take his life. So Job's trials began. First, Job lost all of his possessions and his children in one day. The Sabaeans stole all of Job's oxen and donkeys and killed all of the workers, and only one person escaped to bring the news to Job. And while that messenger was speaking, another messenger came running to tell him that fire fell from the sky and burned the sheep and the shepherds. At the same time, another messenger arrived with news that the Chaldeans had stolen their camels and killed the shepherds, and that a strong wind had come and his 10 children had died instantly. Job literally lost everything in one day, and this was his response. Job stood up and tore his robe in grief, and then he shaved his head and fell to the ground to worship. And he said, "I came naked from my mother's womb, and I will be naked when I leave. The Lord gave me what I had, and the Lord has taken it away. Praise the name of the Lord." In all of this, Job did not sin by blaming God. Job 1, 20 through 22. Wow. So after all that had happened, Job says, "Praise the name of the Lord." And he was still not finished with his trial. After this, his body was filled with sores. His wife and his friends told them that he was like this because of sin in his life. But no one really knew why Job was going through such a difficult time. Only God. And although Job was confused and hurt, he never ever lost his faith in God. On the contrary, he cried out to God, seeking answers and comfort. And here, Job shows us that keeping faith in God, even in the darkest moments, is so important. Because despite losing everything, Job never stopped trusting God or worshiping Him. His example shows us that even if we don't understand why we have difficult things, we can trust that God has a plan and that He is going to be with us and give us the strength to overcome them. The life of Job is one of the clearest and strongest teachings in the Bible, and God allowed Job to lose everything but his life, to test his faith. Job was tested by fire, and he remained faithful. And Job was not the only one in the Bible who was tested. The Apostle Paul was also, and we see in Paul's life that God totally transformed him. He was a Pharisee, and he persecuted the followers of Christ. But he had an encounter with Jesus one day that changed his life, and he became a follower of Jesus himself. Paul was imprisoned for preaching the gospel of Jesus, and despite being in chains, Paul was not discouraged. Instead, he wrote letters to the churches encouraging them to stand in their faith, and those letters still encourage us today. In one of his letters, Paul wrote, "I know how to live on almost nothing or with everything. I have learned the secret of living in every situation, whether it's on a full stomach or empty, with plenty or little. For I can do everything through Christ who gives me strength. Philippians 4:12-13. Both men faced extreme trials, but their faith in God gave them the courage to go on. Job in his suffering learned to trust in God's sovereignty and was restored with twice what he had lost. And Paul, in his imprisonment, continued his ministry and strengthened many believers with his writings. The testimonies of Job and Paul teach us that no matter what the circumstances, God gives us the strength and the courage to go on. And that's our key point today. God gives me the courage to follow through. When we face difficulties, we can remember their examples and trust that God is with us, giving us the courage and strength to persevere. And just as our memory verse says, and I hope you've learned it, let's read it one more time together. Do not be afraid or discouraged, for the Lord will personally go ahead of you. He will be with you. He will never fail you nor abandon you. Deuteronomy 31:8. When you face difficult times, remember that God is with you, giving you the courage to move forward. Keep your faith strong, seek support in prayer and community, and trust that God has a plan for your life, even in dark moments.